when we looked at the signature solution and what we could do with that, then we also looked at, okay, here's how we can uh, price things differently, and here's all the conversations that go into it, and things just really started to come together. But it was painful. I mean, I will say, um, not only painful internally for me just to wrap my head around what needed to happen, but then also to talk within the institution, because it is such a shift in a mindset
Mhm.
about how to go about this.
If education sales has you second guessing yourself, take a breath. This is a trust first, relationship driven market, and the old tactics, they don't translate. This show replaces guesswork with clarity and a customer acquisition system that builds a pipeline you can trust. I'm Josh Chernikoff, two-time education founder with 2 exits and a lead gen coach for companies in education. Through my ed sales elevation experience over the last 2 years, I've coached 210 companies to leads on repeat. In 2025 alone, I delivered over 2,600 hours of coaching to education companies. My co-host is John Gamba. He also has a successful exit, and now he's the Director of Innovative Programs and the Entrepreneur in Residence at Penn's Graduate School of Education. This is the only show dedicated to customer acquisition for education companies, so consistent listeners go from stalled deals to clarity, credibility, and a pipeline they can rely on. This is Ed Sales Edge, where education company founders earn their edge. Welcome to another edition of the Ed Sales Edge. I am joined by Edwin Blanton, the Assistant Vice Provost for Corporate Initiatives and Business Development from the University of Texas at San Antonio in the Professional and Continuing Education Department. I'm going to bring my friend Edwin in, especially after I read that very long and amazing title. But first, I have a question for our audience. I want to ask a hard question. What happens to our audience of people who sell in education after a great conversation? You finally get that meeting, they lean in, they say this makes sense, and then the tough question that I have to ask you, what happens when they say, now I need to run this up the chain? Those are the words that we do not want to hear in the education space, because deals generally die right there. Today's show is about why some conversations keep moving, and Edwin, my friend, has figured out how to keep those conversations moving. So, Edwin, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Cool. You have a very strong LinkedIn presence. We worked very hard on it, and you have kept working on it. You also built a signature solution, a very clear offer. So, before we get deep into why your LinkedIn presence and your signature solution works, why don't you tell us more about you and your role just at UT San Antonio?
Certainly, and thank you. I've been with UT San Antonio for almost 4 years now, and I work in professional and continuing education with a new initiative. And so, even though it's 4 years on, I'll still call it a new initiative because I was brought in to oversee it. As a public institution, we believe we are here to serve the public. And we can do that with short term trainings and certificate programs. But what this requires to make it happen is a lot of conversations with a lot of business leaders that know that they do have some pain points and some things they want to make sure to train their employees on, and that's kind of where we step in with professional and continuing education to help meet that need that's in our community.
Isn't that the truth? And if you're watching this on video, you're probably seeing me smile just a little bit, and because Edwin is speaking the truth, because he was having a lot of conversations with folks and not really able to close the deals. However, We worked hard together. And most education sellers struggle with two things. Correct me if I'm wrong here. They show everything that they offer, check. They talk to people who can't say yes, check. You solved for both of those. You really flipped the conversation from here's what we have, what do you want, to let's assess what's actually getting in the way and design a path forward. Can you talk about the shift that you made for UT San Antonio in your department so that we were getting deals closed faster?
Certainly, and you hit the nail right on the head with that one. When I first started looking at everything, so we have over 1,000 training courses,
Mm,
and they
mm,
vary from in person to asynchronous to live virtual, and can be either on our campus or at the place of the employer. But of course, 1,000, that's like drinking from a fire hose, right? When you have that many options. And so in order to flip it, that's really where my signature solution really came about, was thinking about, well, how can I flip this? And it starts with assessing. And so assessing and charting the course, and then really helping these leaders of organizations execute the the professional education that we have planned for their employees. So
yeah.
that definitely changed things a lot. It was just absolutely overwhelming starting the other way around, which I think we can all understand.
Yeah. The shift that you made, which let me point out was not easy and is not easy for anybody in education. It changed your sales conversations, it changed your pricing model, and it even changed how your university packaged and delivered your workforce education. And even today, I mean, we're probably not maybe not a year since we worked together, but even today, I'm still amazed at the change that happened from our work inside such a large university. If something feels unclear that I'm saying, or your momentum is stalled, don't wait. Text me directly. Yes, I read all of the text messages. The phone number 771-333-4233. You will be texting me directly. Tell me what you sell into education or where you're stuck, and I will help you. Now, we're going to get back to the show. When you changed the signature solution, when you worked on the signature solution, what was it like and how did it stretch you in new ways?
Mm. Yeah, very good question. I think one of the things you pointed out there, Josh, I'm working inside a very large institution, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so there's multiple levels here, and multiple levels of approval and compliance and regulation, and so many other things that a lot of entrepreneurs don't necessarily face. And it's trying to create something new inside a very large organization, but it really allowed coming up with the signature solution allowed me to really take a framework back to so many other leaders here on our campus to look at kind of how we're thinking about going about one these conversations, but then as you mentioned, we kind of blew up our pricing model to think about how that could really come together. Unlike traditional college tuition, professional and continuing education, we do have different metrics that we look at. But when we looked at the signature solution and what we could do with that, then we also looked at, okay, here's how we can uh, price things differently, and here's all the conversations that go into it, and things just really started to come together. But it was painful. I mean, I will say, um, not only painful internally for me just to wrap my head around what needed to happen, but then also to talk within the institution, because it is such a shift in a mindset
Hmm.
about how to go about this.
Yeah, that's so interesting the way you say that. And when you put it that way, it was painful internally. And when you just said that, I thought, well, he's probably going down the University of Texas San Antonio route. But no, you meant like internally inside Edwin,
Yes.
because when I think back to that time, I mean, we got through it, but it is really hard. It's a really challenging exercise. Exercise is putting it lightly, to think about your offering. How do you make your offering irresistible to people, or as Alex Hormozy says, almost make people feel stupid for not learning more? You
Mm.
had to first do that internally inside Edwin. Then you had to do it internally inside your institution. When you did those two things, what ended up happening is that you simplified your offering so much that externally people started to understand what you could offer. And the real switch that you made was going from, here's all of our programs, tell me what fits, there's 1,000 of them, to what's actually costing you time, money, or people, business in the San Antonio area, and tell me why. And that assessment first mindset changed everything. Is that right?
Right, exactly. Exactly. That changed things because it was just quite simply so overwhelming to see just the abilities that we had and present that up front without just doing that listening on the front end. It was something that I had to really teach myself to not jump ahead in the conversations and
Right.
immediately come up with, oh, well, I have 20 different ideas to run by you for the problem you're currently talking about. But instead, to listen to them again, further explain, further get into to depth on um, what what they really wanted to address through some professional and continuing education, and and help them get closer and closer to that decision.
As a result of that three-phase journey,
Yes.
assess, from vague workforce pain to clear shared priorities, align, from disconnected training options to a tailored learning pathway to activate. Number three, from stalled initiatives to measurable retention and performance gains. The signature solution was great right there. But then we essentially ended up changing the whole business model,
Mm.
which is monumental too.
Right, exactly. Because one of the things that I found out was, okay, once a, a, a leader has really decided, we really need training on whatever topic it is. So let's say it's on communication skills and leadership, perhaps. Well, once they understand, yes, this is exactly what we want. Well, then I still had so many other options for them. Do you want your employees to learn asynchronously, meaning, late at night, early morning, on their lunch break, whenever they can get to it at their own pace? Or is it a live virtual format, something like a fun and informative Zoom meeting, more or less? Is it in person? And if it
Mhm.
is in person, do they want to come to our campus and fight traffic and figure out where to meet on a college campus, which works for some? There's some excitement there. Or is it best if our facilitator comes and meets in your conference room, where also sometimes employees are constantly interrupted by their day job getting in the
Mm.
way of the training they're going through? And so they still had all these other options even once they decided on this course and this action. And so that helped us to uh, really help narrow it down for them and really think about, was it A, B, or C? What's going to work out best? Asynchronous, uh, on virtually, or in person, and really help them come up to a decision, which varies so much for organizations. And there's so much of an organization's culture that comes into play
Mhm.
with those decisions. And by framing it that way, we were able to help decision makers reach that decision that they needed.
Before we keep going, quick pause. If you've been putting your offer out there and people are interested, but not moving, there's usually one reason. Your solution isn't landing clearly. It sounds good, but it doesn't feel specific. That's exactly why we built the Signature Solution Framework. It helps you take what you do and turn it into something buyers can understand quickly and decide on faster. So you stop explaining and start getting real traction. If you want that, check the show notes or text solution to 771-333-4233. All right, let's get back to it.
That's a beautiful thing. And that's what the Signature Solution does. And that's, to put it into just very simple words, that's what an offer does. A clear offer allows you to make a decision. The confused mind doesn't buy. And what we find with the companies that we work with, they don't have a clear offer. So how do they expect anybody to buy? So, this idea of the easy for me to say, the flagpole problem, the person feels the pain. They're rarely the person who signs the check.
Yes.
However, when you are able to talk to them and say, here's our offer, here's how we can do it, and they understand it, and then they can explain it, now we're getting somewhere. Because if they can go back and explain it, they don't just like what they've heard, they're like carrying it. They're owning it for you and taking it back to their employer, in your case, and saying, we should do this. Here's why. Here's what it is. Here's the transformation. So is that kind of the major shift that you were able to see, that they became your champion?
Exactly. And in fact, part of that is also making sure they understood and they had whatever questions answered that they wanted to answered when they took that up the chain of command. And so helping them be my champion as they took that forward was key for all of them. Okay, what other information can I provide for you? And also being very open. If you want to see some of the curriculum, some of the handouts in advance, happy to share that. If I can help you be my champion to take this up to whoever does sign the check.
Edwin, you are my champion. I'm not going to cry on camera, but you did just warm my heart, because you reminded me of one of the most important parts of the Signature Solution, of the offer, which is after you tell somebody about your offer, superintendent, business in San Antonio, whatever it is, a teacher, you ask them, do you have any questions around how this is going to work for you? Because I want to answer all of them before you leave, before we finish this conversation. Because at that point, I just want you to have to sit with two things, your time and your money. But you will, at this point, have no question about my offer and my credibility, which leads me to talking about credibility. You have done a really nice job. People should look you up on LinkedIn, because you have a very consistent flow of Monday posts and Wednesday posts, and then lots of other posts. Very nice, offering value. And so when you've got that very clear offer, when you've got that very clear credibility, the buying becomes much easier for people. Talk about your approach, mindset, and even systems that you're using when it comes to your use of LinkedIn and credibility.
Right. Yes. That's one of the things that I've not only seen a lot of value in, but I've enjoyed, and that's my LinkedIn presence, and really being able to build that and to be able to share, and really thinking about not just being on there with a hard sales pitch by any means, but to build credibility. And so I like to make sure I share all of Edwin, right? And so I find myself a very positive person and believe Motivation Mondays are perfect. I mean, Mondays can be really rough. And so I think we could all use some motivation.
Yeah.
So that's one thing that I've just made sure to work into a system, a Motivation Monday. But then also, I want to talk about the workforce here. And as I mentioned, in my role, a public institution should help the public. And so, how do we help support the workforce of our region? And so, Workforce Wednesday, that's
Ding,
where
ding, ding.
it's in, right? And so, and then some other posts that fill in throughout the course of the week. And so, this helps build that credibility not only for myself, right? Because I'm putting my whole self out there in so many ways, but also the credibility of what we have with professional and continuing education. So I make sure to tie in some of our wonderful programs that we have, whether that's for HR certification, or it's in project management, or one of the other subjects. Make sure to have that featured in those posts.
Last interruption. Before we wrap this show, I want to remind you guys the Ed Sales Elevation Experience is where we help founders develop and design lead generation machines that bring in high quality, high converting leads for their education companies on repeat. Get more details in the show notes. Now, let's bring this show home.
Yeah, it really is wonderful to open LinkedIn and see you offering value, offering motivation, spotlighting others on Workforce Wednesdays. And it is a 1-2 punch. It has to be a 1-2 punch. It has to be the credibility with a clear offer. Most of the folks are going to want to kind of copy you. First of all, they're going to have to find an endless amount of positivity, which you have. But let's talk about the real things that they can get right off the bat. If they're listening and they're thinking, my solution makes sense, but it's hard to explain, and I would be more like Edwin. First of all, that's not a sales problem. That's a clarity problem. They need a signature solution that helps the buyer explain the value without you. They need to beat objections before they surface. You're very good at that. And you need to make sure your reputation arrives into the room before you do. That is what you have built. So I'm going to turn it to you to see if there's anything I left out, Edwin. If you could talk to people in the education space, pre-K up to gray, and what you think they could do to make their signature solution, their offer, more clear so that the buying process goes a little bit more smoothly for them.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it's key to constantly ask why at each step, and think about, as you're developing a signature solution, think about, well, what's the why? Why do you have this step in the first place? And think about what that answer is, right? And so perhaps one of the challenges that I have when talking with a lot of leaders is, oh, well, our employees are going to miss work for X number of hours to attend this training. What's in it for me? And I can think about that step and be like, well, why is this important, and how would I address that? And so being able to have that thinking about, well, it's not just it's not uh, it's valuable time that will come back multifold if you take time to invest in there. And so I
Right.
think constantly always thinking about the why at each step is important.
That's true. That's why we do this. That's truly why we have these conversations, is so that um, I have also been through the process of the signature solution with my first company, Ashley Tutors. There were mainly objections from the students who didn't want the tutoring, and I had to go through objections with them. when I was running my after school enrichment business, many of the objections were from the PTAs that had run these programs for a very long time. And I had to get over those objections. And you and I are completely aligned with facing the objections and facing them with this is why we do this.
Right.
And when you face those objections with this is why we do this, and case studies and facts and stories and experiences, there's really no refuting it. There's also no refuting that you have been one of my most favorite people I've worked with. I really value the time that we spent together. I value the success that you're having. And so I'm very proud of that. And I can't wait to cross paths face-to-face, in person, potentially coming up in March at a conference in San Antonio for my friends at IEI. And I'll get a nice big hug from you. For now, again, thank you for everything you've done for me and being a part of our community.
Well, thank you, Josh. I appreciate all the work that we've done together to make this. And it really has been revolutionary in so many ways. So I appreciate that. And I do look forward to seeing you in person.
Thank you, sir. We'll see you soon.
All right, that's it for this episode of the Ed Sales Edge. Thanks for joining us. If you sell into education, the goal of this show is very simple: to help you stop guessing what actually moves deals in a system where trust matters. If you want to go deeper, join us inside The Entourage, our private community for education founders and operators selling into schools. You'll see the details in the show notes. If this episode helped you think more clearly, that's great. Subscribe, like it, and share it with another founder in the education space. Until next time, get clear, build trust, set up a system for sales, and keep earning your edge.